Bridget, whenever you're ready. Oh, and we're live. There we go. Wow, look at this thing. It's actually working. I like that. Hello. Thank you for watching the stream. My name is Jim Mckay. Welcome to PT Pintcast, a show that'll help physical therapists, avoid missing out on a lot of insight, some amazing stories, and some inspiration within the profession. Tonight, we're going to go west. We're going to go west. We're going to go to the West Coast. To California. We've got 3 physical therapists tonight who are going to be hosting a webinar on telehealth. I mean, if you've got your finger right here on the pulse of the profession, you've got to know in the last few months that telehealth has really, really risen to the top of things you need to pay attention to as a physical therapist. In one way, shape, or form, we need to figure out how we're going to navigate telehealth, and our experts from the State of California Physical Therapy Association are going to do that. I want to set the stage here, do some housekeeping. The comments below, whether you're on Twitter or you're on Facebook, you can drop a comment or a question. Feel free to get as specific as you want. You can always ask what we're drinking. Always a good question to ask. And keep in mind, we still have some of these koozies available. We'll let you know how to get some of those too. But we're going to make sure that you guys get some links to some really, really tactical bits of advice on how to bring telehealth into your practice as a physical therapist in the year 2020. So are you guys ready to go? If you are, make sure you drop below your name, where you're watching or listening from, and let us know that this whole comment thing is actually working. Now that that's out of the way, let's bring in our first guest. Our first guest, an esteemed physical therapist who's helping people recover from hand injuries. Yeah, she's helping me flex. She's here today to talk telehealth and how physical therapy can help improve physical strength and function while we're at home watching way too many Zoom meetings or podcasts recorded via Facebook Live or whatever you are. I know I could use some assistance on at least maintaining some my awesome physique here in New York. Bring in the show, Annie Burke Doe. Annie, welcome to the program. Here she comes.
Hi, thank you for having me, Jimmy. I'm thrilled to be here.
I rarely get one-upped for a background, but I got to give you credit right there.
Can you believe it?
I don't know where you are, but I want to be there. Yeah. So you got the beautiful fence. You're in Northern California right now, correct?
Northern Cal, yes.
I love that. All right, Annie, first question is always the hardest. What are we drinking tonight?
I'm drinking an Aperol Spritz. A little Prosecco, a little liqueur, Aperol, some ice.
Can't go wrong there. I'm going to give a shout to Sloop Brewing Company in New York. This is the Juice Bomb IPA. We've got our koozie on there, but you can see it's a Juice Bomb. So we do the virtual cheers to the camera right there. And
absolutely.
Tink, we've got that, and a little sippy sip. And let's proceed with the knowledge. First of all, thanks for taking so much time. Thanks for taking your time out to talk with us. We really appreciate things like this. You guys are getting set. All the guests tonight are going to be appearing on a webinar, which the State of California Physical Therapy Association, nice enough, smart enough, had enough foresight enough to say, hey, there's some valuable information out there. Let's make sure we get our experts out there. So no pressure at all. You're a telehealth expert. And the first thing we want to talk about is that telehealth requires a unique knowledge base. You need to know a few of the things. We call them stable datum. Right, the things that you need to
have to have.
Sure, you have to have them, and then you can vary from there. Or you can kind of you can riff from there, and you can be creative from there. But you've got to know this unique knowledge base. When I say that, where's your head go?
Well, firstly, you need to know a little bit about technology, right? Yeah. So you need a computer, you need access to the internet. You need to make sure it's secure, right? Because you're going to have important data of individuals. So you don't want it just splashed all over the world. So something that's encrypted, for example. As well, you need to know your audience, right? Who are you working with? I work with littles, 0 to 3.
Wow.
So I probably won't be able to help you with your hand problem.
Right.
But if you need to learn to crawl or sit or walk, I am your gal. but I need to know a little bit about developmental milestones and how to really coach the family or the caregiver to be able to help that movement in littles.
So when you're setting these things up, let's go real granular, right?
Okay.
You've got a continuing patient that you've seen in person, but now it's time to see them via telehealth. How are you preparing them? Are you letting them know about where to position either the laptop, the phone, the tablet, what to bring into the room, in terms of, because if you're working with kids, you're going to need some things to keep them entertained,
Yes.
other than a face on a screen, which is a little bit entertaining, but they might get distracted. How are you preparing people for a visit via telehealth?
Yeah, one of the first things I find out about really the clientele or the family is what are their goals? What things are they interested in? And what are we going to do if technology fails?
Oh,
So backup system, are we going to make a phone call? Are you going to switch from the computer to your phone? And ideally, what are those best locations? Am I working on a stair activity? Am I working on standing? Do I need them to have a good wall to lean against? Do we want to work on crawling? What locations in the house are ideal, and motivation do they need? So I would say for probably the last year, Baby Shark was a big deal. And I did a lot of Baby Shark.
it's stuck in my
So
ear right now. Don't you don't need to remind me,
yeah,
but the
yeah,
baby shark
sorry.
is stuck in my head right now.
And then I need to know really their learning style, because not everyone learns through visual, not everyone learns through auditory. Do I need to get videos in place? Do I need to email handouts? What will be the tools that will make sort of these activities stick?
So it sounds like, Annie, it sounds like a lot of being very, very thoughtful ahead of time. Because some of these things that you can do, if you were at a clinic in person, like we're used to, you could do this very, very quickly. You know
Right.
exactly where the handouts are. You can move to a stair activity, or you could bring in a different app, or you could bring in a bike or a balance activity. But I feel like what I'm hearing from you is you need to be very, very thoughtful and prepared, right? This is like the Boy Scout motto. We need to now be very, very prepared of all the different directions this could possibly go in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And handle sort of disaster at some level. If some folks are far away, as far as they can't access PT typically locally, so there might be a fire problem and snow, things that maybe will shut our ability down. So I've
Right.
even had to handle that sort of thing as well.
When you mentioned that, I was like, what is she talking about in terms of
I know,
fire?
disaster.
You guys are in California, so this is something you guys have had to think about and pivot on
Yes.
regularly. This is not even like a maybe. This is a thing that you've done.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, crazy experiences. I mean, how far have you had to pivot? I'm sure all these things that you've mentioned in terms of losing connection or fires or so, like those things have happened.
Yes, losing connection is very common, often due to weather,
Right.
snow, for example. So, and then that backup system, can I use the phone and still keep the therapy session going?
Right.
Or we just reschedule.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pivot. But I feel like physical therapists like to be able to pat ourselves in the back and saying that we're typically pretty good. We're trained from, first semester, first year of PT school through our clinical rotations, through our practice to be able to be pivoters in terms of what might happen next.
I do think we plan ahead, or that is one of our good skills, that you're sort of forward thinking, because you
Yeah.
don't want to get stuck in the hallway with out a backup
Right.
with a client, right? So you're like,
Right.
oh, how far am I going to go? What am I going to need? So in this environment, that would absolutely be needed. And then, like you mentioned, do I need a book to motivate the child? Do I need that song to motivate the child? How am I going to get consistent measurements over time? What can I have that really, how can I coach mom or dad or family member to do repetitive things for me so I can see them improve and change? And um, I feel fortunate to be able to practice telehealth.
That's great. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned HIPAA secure. You got to make sure that the thing that you're using, like literally the platform that we're using right now, is
Right.
secure. What do you use? What are you using right now?
I use Zoom, is my kind of go-to
Right.
format.
So nice and secure. You like that, and a lot of people have a bunch of different preferences, but also some of our listeners and watchers right now on Facebook and Twitter, a lot of them are saying like, I don't even know where to start in terms of that. But make sure you understand and research this platform. What does this platform have in terms of encryption or security?
Right.
And then make sure, I'm guessing you probably did a few practice Zoom meetings with some people before you saw your first patient, right? Make sure you know how to use this technology pretty well.
Yeah, so practice with family, practice with a peer, another colleague, just so that you're, again, prepared for the changes that could happen. But Zoom, everyone sort of knows how to do it
Sure.
now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For better or for worse, we're kind of
Yes,
into that.
Zoom
So
society.
we talked about the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
how to use telehealth, and I feel like if you have to be living under a rock to say I haven't even heard of this. What are the things that you've seen about it in terms of, is it improving the quality of life? Does telehealth work? I mean, we know it works, right? You can see people
Yeah.
in here, but in your experience, telehealth, is it delivering, other than video and audio, is it delivering what we want to in terms of care?
Well, the evidence in the literature would say yes. Personal experience, I can say yes. But I have to tell you, I wasn't like the go-to person straight away. I
Really?
really had to research it. Yeah, because we're physical therapists. We need our hands. I need to touch a baby and hold it and feel tone and spasticity. And would this medium limit me? Would I ever be able to, actually see the child? Could I do a home visit? What were going to be those limitations? But a lot of folks would get nothing. So that was an easy, yes, I'll transition, because I was doing telehealth before COVID came, and it did take some, study and research to say, okay, I agree to do this. But the big kicker for me was uh, online video telehealth, or you don't get physical therapy, and
Yeah.
maybe your child has, they need it, it's appropriate. So um, I was all over that part of it.
Yeah, like almost like the unfair thing was, and I've been to major conferences, since I was a student, was we were talking about the use of telehealth for people in rural areas for years.
Yeah.
But I feel like the rest of the country was like, yeah, but we need to see people in person. And now that everybody's quarantined, or all the sorts of rules and regulations, now we're like, all right, now we'll jump in. The people in rural America must be saying, well, thanks, but we've been yelling about this for years.
I think so, or practitioners that had already were early adopters, right?
Yeah.
And that's really where the evidence is telling us. I know there's more to come to continue, but it clearly shows that telehealth, you still get good outcomes. You can use outcome measures. You can teach people how to set up a sit-to-stand test, for example. You can get good quality measures and improve the way people move and change their life.
Well, let's talk about that, because everybody wants to go right to the evidence, right? The people whoever dig their heels in whenever there's a change, they always say, what's the evidence? What are you going to show me?
Yeah.
But we know that from you, telehealth is supported by evidence of efficacy. We know this. So talk about
Right.
that.
Some of the literature would say cost savings, improved outcomes, increased access, higher patient satisfaction. And that's not always true, because I can say, some of the parents would say, no, I really want to see you,
Sure.
face to face. And depending on your ability, you might be able to do that. But there are studies, you can see the literature, American Physical Therapy Association site, CPTA, the California Physical Therapy Association, and we're really putting that information out so people can take a look at it. And how about this? So I'm an academic. You can also, students can get their clinical hours
Really?
using telehealth, and
Yeah.
they need it now, right? All of our curriculums will be shifting to make this an important piece of learning.
Yeah, we got someone off camera right now, but in the background, producer Juliet just finished up her last clinical rotation, passed the MPTE. But in her last rotation, she was talking to me about how telehealth was emerging in the practice she was doing her third rotation in, and her, her CI was like, "Oh yeah, give this a rip." She was leading. She was teaching the CI how the things were going because you were learning in the moment. So yeah, give it a rip.
Yeah, let's do it.
Meeting the patient, the client, the caregiver, where they are. I feel like it'd be harder to get more where they are than this thing right here, whatever you're watching on. But that's what telehealth gets to deliver, right?
Absolutely. We're just, it gets you with people, helping them, changing their lives. We're lucky, and I hope more people take that leap or that rip, right? To uh, go for it, try it, and I think people will be satisfied. It's kind of like anytime, anywhere PT,
Right.
versus making people come to your office. Maybe it's not as efficient. Maybe their goal really is to um, get what they need to know so they can carry it with them versus, oh, I need you to come to my place, my time. And it's really not that convenient.
Yeah. Loving the comments that I'm seeing coming in for the feed. Feel free to drop them in though. First of all, you got Cookie Friedhoff Bowman, who literally, this podcast is more than 600 episodes deep. Cookie was episode numero uno. So I want to give her
Wow.
she's saying hi from Lexington, Kentucky, where telehealth has been used for a long time for MDs. PTs started using it with good results there. We love seeing that. Another fellow Californian is Jimmy Piscini. Telehealth lifesaver this year for students finishing their rotations to prevent delays in graduation. Look at that little example, right? That little example. How big of an impact is that when you're saying students can get hours out of this and they're doing this, but also on the other end, of course, is the patient care. A great example of this little tool, this intervention that we can use. I mean, everybody loves that toolbox analogy, right? One more thing to put in your toolbox. I mean, this is a toolbox.
Yeah, and I'm seeing Bridget Nolan is asking, how do I handle the short attention span of kids? So I either try to find out from mom, dad, caregiver, what's their favorite item and bring it in, or I maybe will switch to it's about education. The little one might be sitting on mom's lap, but now we're talking about what things they can do next, what went well. We can reflect on what's working, what's not working. Sometimes I'll have them really pan out and I see the room and maybe there's a distraction. It's like, oh, we might need to turn that TV off because maybe they're being distracted.
Right.
But it is an art. And Bridget, I think every physical therapist, they have those tools, right? These little tricks and those same things will just come into your mind and you'll be creative and you'll use, the laundry basket as a choo-choo train.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, everything that you're saying, if you took telehealth and technology out of it, this feels a lot like physical therapy, right? You've got to test the tool. You're saying make sure that you know what that toy or that thing, that song, or that character that drives your patient.
Right.
That's good PT. Period.
Period.
Yeah. Take some practice too, right? That's something you have to make sure in terms of, like, we talked about this, we nudged on it in terms of making sure you understand how to use the technology, because you probably have to educate the parents on it You've got to make sure when something goes wrong, you're an expert on it. So telehealth takes some practice. You should definitely probably test this out and, take it for a few test drives.
Yeah. And just get somebody maybe that's healthy and see how you would come up with ideas. And it's a lot of it's changing, right? Your position and angling the camera if you want to show by example, because I'm sure all of you, if you have, say, get on your knees, or do you show them and you get on your knees so that they can see?
Right.
And where would their hand go? So it's what you would do face to face, but you're using the camera, the angles, and the medium to get your points across.
You didn't think necessarily that in PT school you needed to learn about camera angles or how to properly position a microphone or how to move a laptop or say pan down or wide shot. That's not something, but that's something we need to now consider, because you need to be able to see and be seen. So this is very, very important.
Right. And sometimes I even, look at my face before they get on and say, oh, you need to go comb your hair because it's sticking up.
But that's just all about using it and knowing those things. Luckily for me, I don't have a lot of hair going on, so I need to worry about that. Little Birdie told me we like to find out little interesting things about our guests. Annie, professional figure skater?
I
That
know.
was
Can you
you?
believe that? I know. I
Tell me
know.
about that.
Yeah.
Where were you living? I mean, in California?
Well, my mom's from Boston,
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
And how she sort of got out of Boston was she joined the water follies. So the first thing she taught her 8 children was how to swim. But she also remembered that the parks used to freeze and she loved to skate. So we had an ice arena that opened. We were the first group in line. I think we bought the first ticket to the city ice arena, and that just led to more lessons and time. I actually didn't go to grades 7, 8, and 9 because I was only skating. You
Wait
know,
a second. You skipped middle school essentially
can
because
you believe that? Yeah,
wow.
we were serious skaters, but
All right, let me ask
in
you.
the end, I'm a physical therapist.
I like that. Let me ask you this. What did being a professional figure skater teach you that you've carried on through now that you now use in your PT career?
I guess kind of the competitive tenacity to get into a PT program.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
give up. That if it's your dream, you keep going, and you won't always win, but you'll get better and improve. It was quite humbling, actually.
Sure, I can imagine. I mean, no offense, man, but I couldn't handle the toe pick. I just couldn't do it. I would be on
Oh,
my face every single time.
there you go. Yeah, you have to have a lot of external rotation so you miss the toe pick.
Yeah. All right. So we want to make sure we let the audience know that we're going to drop a link in the comments once this episode is over so that we're just giving people a taste
Yeah.
of the full webinar that's going to happen with yourself, with Alan, with Chris, and the State of California Physical Therapy Association. This is just kind of a taste test, a little bit of a sneak peek. But we want to make sure that we find out some more about you. So we're going to do 3 questions. Annie, are you ready for 3 questions?
Okay,
Let's
I'm
do 3
ready.
questions right now. All right, 3 questions brought to you by our friends from Arias Medical Staffing. If you're looking for positions, and I know a lot of people are, if you want to be a great PT or PTA anywhere in the 50 U.S. states, there are a lot of areas that are really hit hard and looking for clinicians. I know a lot of people are saying, wow, people are out of work. Yes, they are in some areas, but some areas they need help. If you're looking for that, check out that website in the bottom, aureusmedical.com. Arias, all settings, positions in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia. So 3 questions brought to you by Arias. No pressure at all, Annie, here.
Okay,
Question
good.
1 is a where question, right? If you could, and I don't know why you'd ever want to leave that background right there in
That's right.
California and Monterey, but if you got to be able to go carte blanche and go anywhere in the U.S. for 3 months and be a PT, where would you want to go?
I would like to go to Yosemite. I
Yeah.
think that's just a fabulous place, and especially during the moonbows on the lower falls.
What are the moonbows? I don't know what that is.
Moonbows, it's at night, so the falls are crashing down, and it makes a
Oh.
spray. But when the moon is out, it makes a rainbow.
I just learned a new word.
Uh,
Moonbows? I
moon,
love that. I am 40 years old and I just learned moonbows. All
you
right.
gotta
We'll keep
go.
going. Question number 2 is a what question. This is how I beef up my Netflix queue, my reading list, and my podcast downloads. What's something you've read, watched, or downloaded that really inspired you that you think the audience would benefit from?
I've watched like everyone else, a TED Talk
Oh, yeah.
by Amy Cuddy, who was a person that was smart growing up, but she also had an injury. It was a head injury, and she was sort of told that she would never do well again. And she overcame that and is a fabulous professor at a university, and she studies body language
Wow.
and kind of the power poses and how to
She, she would have a lot to say about my positioning because I'm usually slumped and kind of just leaning and
yeah.
drinking.
So those are positions that kind of don't give you as much power as like
Yeah.
pride.
I'll do that. Well, producer Juliet, maybe we can find Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, drop it in the comments, and I will watch this immediately after the episode to make sure I have my power poses. Third question is a who question. Who should the audience know more about? This is kind of like your chance to kind of give someone props or name drop or anything like that.
Well, outside of the two gentlemen that you're going to get to meet next, one of my mentors was Nancy Bill, who was the chair of the Department of Physical Therapy at UCSF. She's retired now, but really kind of an amazing person to know. And you'll definitely find her at CSM and all of the physical therapy conferences, but definitely someone to know for PT stuff.
Someone good to elbow rub with.
Oh, absolutely.
We love that. Absolutely. All right, final thing we do on the show, it's tradition. We have a thing called the parting shot. Let's do that. Parting shot is brought to you by the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Find them online at orthopt.org. A lot of people studying and taking this time in COVID to advance themselves in terms of education. Maybe they're looking for their OCS. Orthopt.org. They've got a bunch of courses that will advance your PT practice. Check that out. Again, that website, orthopt.org. Parting shot, Annie. Your last chance to really leave like a mic drop moment for the audience. If you had that chance for a mic drop, what would you want to leave with them?
That if telehealth is something that you have been afraid of or not thinking that you could do it, go out there, use all your skills, make it happen, and you'll be great at it, and it will help people in society.
Yeah. If you're afraid of it, that just means you don't understand it, right? So you get into there, check out the webinar that the State of California Physical Therapy Association is going to put together with you and our next two guests. Figure it out. Be adaptable and pivot, and in the end, your patients will benefit. Annie, I appreciate you stopping by the show.
Thanks, you guys.
Anywhere, just kind of go in the background. I'll put you in the green room. We're going to bring our next guest in on the show in just 2 seconds. This is PT Pintcast, the virtual happy hour with the California Physical Therapy Association. Don't move. We're back in 10 seconds. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back on the show. I told you it would be 10 seconds, and I think it was less than 10 seconds. We bring in this guest. No stranger to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Bringing in Mr. Alan Lee. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jimmy. This is great to see you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Alan, please tell me all about the T-shirt that you're wearing right now.
Yeah, this was designed by Jimmy Mckay, PT Pintcast, for our Technopalooza at CSM. Which was like years ago, but it was just a few months ago.
I know, that was CSM in Denver, which feels like it was millennia ago. Alan, give us your, don't give me the CV because it'll take too long because you do a lot of stuff and you've been doing it for a while. But just let everybody know in the audience who might not know who you are, just briefly what you get to do in the PT space.
Sure. Well, I get to work with wonderful people like you and Dr. Doe and Chris Reed at CPTA. And for APTA, I'm the Telehealth lead for the Frontiers in Rehab Science and Technology Council. And I'm also the VP for the Technology SIG under Health Policy and Administration, working with Dr. Bob Max.
So fingers are crossed, and I'll give a little plug because Bob would be, if he's watching right now, because he's a tech guy, of course he's watching, but he'd be like, listen, man, if you're not even mentioning Technopalooza, which is the T-shirt that you're wearing, that's an event that the Tech SIG does at CSM. And really, it's like a test drive. You let people come up and kick the tires and put flesh onto technology to try out the latest thing in rehab tech. That's fantastic.
Yes, and we had you this year to MC it, and it was just fantastic. If you guys can go back to some of the episodes that Jimmy has, you'll hear some of the presenters who are at Technopalooza and about their expertise. So thank you again.
All right, so let's get into to some of the specifics. You've been talking about telehealth for a long time, and now I feel like the rest of the world is saying, "Oh my gosh, we got to pay attention." Telehealth is here. So my first question would be, since it's here, where do we start? Now what?
Sure. Now what? I agree. I think we need to kind of think about moving forward. How do we make this permanent in terms of payment, in terms of practice, But as you heard from Dr. Doe, in education as well. So that is in terms of looking at standards of practice. As the House of Delegates at APTA, you've heard from last week's
Right.
EP Pintcast Happy Hour, right? And just really moving forward with some of the best evidence, best practice, and also best advocacy.
So when you talk about standards of practice, and Alan's referring to the episode with Kyle Covington of Duke University and also the vice speaker of the House, talk a little bit about that. Why? I feel like everything's just shining a light on things, and literally I'm shining a light on things in terms of advocating an APTA and all the different state chapters like California and various others. They've been making sure that we've been shining a light on these things for a while now to make sure that they're in our scope of practice, in our state of practice. This has got to feel pretty good now that everybody's paying attention to it. You've been talking about it for years.
Yeah, telehealth is not an overnight event or success. So it does feel good in that we were able to help lots of patients and clients to stay safe during this public health emergency. But obviously there are some professional and personal responsibilities and obligations as we open up practice to keep patients safe. So we really have to think about standards of care that, again, will be very safe, cost effective, but the same quality of care as Annie has spoke about earlier, and not making it any less than what it is in terms of practice.
Yeah. So really, when I was listening to Kyle last week in terms of, standard of practice, making sure we're raising the floor, right? We're not, telehealth and technology will raise the ceiling, but in terms of standard of practice, we're raising the floor and saying, this is the level of care this is the least level of care you should get no matter where you go with a physical therapist in the United States, to make sure that you're being delivered quality care from a skilled professional.
That's it. And if you really have more time to look at APTA Virtual Next, you'll see 2 or 3 or 4 different presentations to really bring up that standard of care. And even Dr. Shirley Sharman last week, in terms of the APTA Rothstein debate and round, we talked about really raising that level as you're talking about. But, there are things that we can, and there are things that we can't do in telehealth. So we as practitioners need to educate patients and clients, students and stakeholders on these are certain things that we could do physically as well as virtually, but there are certain exams and things that we can't do. And I think we understand that really well. That would raise that expectation as well as reduce the fear of others who don't think that is appropriate, I guess. I
love that. Alan, we jumped into it. I got so excited when you jumped on the screen. I never asked you the most important and the most difficult question. What are we drinking?
Oh, it's in this little cup, and I call it a SoCal Mule, and it's just ginger beer. So a little bit of ginger beer.
Ginger beer in the copper cup, man. So cheers to you. I'll make sure I cheers properly to you.
And you will send me your address so we can get you this. This is where I'm at right now, where Stone Brewery is headquarters in Carlsbad, California. And hopefully I can get this to you before 4th of July. Okay?
Is that where Stone is?
Yes, it is.
I did not know that. I've known Stone Brewery. I've enjoyed their beers for a long time. And I will definitely give you my address to make sure you can send me beer. I will not prohibit that. And for the listeners out there too, whenever you want to send us beer, we'll give you the address of the world headquarters of a show, and you can send us as much stuff as you want. We will never prohibit that. Moving on, in terms of telehealth, that's what people are hanging out. We want to make sure that the audience knows. Feel free to drop questions or comments in below, whether you're watching on Facebook or on Twitter, or if you're watching the replay. If you're watching this replay online, we'll make sure these guys are tagged so they can follow up and really nail your specific questions. But in terms of telehealth PT, evidence is emerging. What do we do next? We started with now what, and now we have what's next. Where's this thing going, Alan? Let me know where the puck's on the way.
Right. As Annie had mentioned, APTA has patient stories as well as the emerging evidence as a guide for PTs to look at, but also to advocate for your stakeholders like insurers and others that are in terms of being a bit mindful but also skeptical about telehealth. I think where we do need to go with healthcare research is about looking at telehealth health services cost effectiveness studies or cost savings, to really tier out that model, which could be either hybrid, which is a little bit of hands-on, and
Right.
telehealth, or just telehealth, or just usual care to see if there's truly a difference or not in physical therapy. So that'll be part of that research. We need research funding, supporting APTA, COSAR, and other activities for research. But also we probably need to collaborate with interprofessional telehealth, telemedicine providers to really help society. And that would consider us to getting in terms of addressing the societal needs, including diversity, equity, and inclusion of those areas that are really underserved.
I love how you're known as the telehealth guy. I mean, I don't want to put the logo on it, but hashtag Alan's kind of one of the telehealth leaders and pioneers, and you're literally advocating for studying telehealth, hybrid, or traditional care. You're literally the telehealth guy. You should just be championing and beating your chest with telehealth. And you're saying, let's study it to make sure.
Yes, I mean that's what a professional, a healthcare provider, as you're hearing Tony Fauci talk about, we really need to be mindful of how we move forward in terms of research, practice, and education. So you're right. I do know that there are downsides or pitfalls or perils, right? Because we've been in this practice for a while, but also there are great promises that we can look forward for next 100+ years in PT and our association with our support. So that's what I think is most important, that we need to be very, very mindful, but also be that skeptic, as you learned in PT programs. And so Juliet, don't forget that. You always have to be mindful of that. Okay?
Be the skeptic. We mentioned the standards of care. You mentioned those a couple seconds ago in terms of let's raise the floor, right? Well, we simultaneously raise the ceiling with this technology. And now a lot of people are rushing towards adapting it, raising that floor. Who should be developing them? And how can me, Jimmy, the random PT, or anybody watching or listening, how can we help to develop the standards of care or push those forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Telehealth, I always thought, was a team sport. So it needs all of us. I mean, many of those practitioners out there in Facebook right now, they've experienced this, and APTA borne out from their survey of 4,000 to 5,000 PTs and PT assistants, that it went from 2% to 50% of practitioners practicing last 2-3 months in telehealth. You guys in the clinics have questions that could be answered for our profession. So I think we all need to be together in terms of developing those standards. And also don't forget about our patient stories and narratives they bring to the table, because at the end of the day, ultimately, those are the folks that we serve, and we need to be mindful of their needs versus what we need.
Yeah, I love that. Alan, you've been on my show before, but we have that tradition. Are you ready for 3 questions? Ready for that?
Sure.
Let's do it right now. Let's do 3 questions. I like it. All right, Alan Lee, 3 questions. No pressure whatsoever for 3 questions, brought to you by our friends from Arias Medical Staffing. Again, positions all over the country in all settings at aureusmedical.com. 3 questions. First one is a where question. You're in California. I know that. Rub it in, whatever. But if you had 3 months to do whatever you want, and with telehealth, you can kind of be wherever you want. Where would you go?
I think I would go to Walden, New York, which is the headquarters for Angry Orchard. But also, I could probably physically hand deliver this beautiful pint to Jimmy Mckay. And the reason that is that we do need that face-to-face time, and we do that a lot in our meetings. And I think that's important as well. We just can't do this virtually. We have to have that face-to-face time.
Love the fact that you're highlighting that, and the audience might not know the random-ass hometown of me, which is Walden, New York, which is the home of Angry Orchard, if you've ever had that. That comes from my town. But I love the fact that you're known as one of the telehealth pioneers, and you're not saying that this is everything. You're saying we do need that face-to-face time, whether that be colleagues at a conference or a physical therapist to a patient. Love the fact that you're the guy pushing everything forward in telehealth, but you're saying this isn't everything, right? Like we're not saying this is one or the other. It's definitely a mix. So I love to hear that from you.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. And I've learned that through the years of other mentors and other, I would say, practitioners who really have educated me. So I need to thank them as well. So
Awesome. All right. Second question on 3 questions is a what question. This is how I build up my reading list, my Netflix queue, my podcast. What's something you've read, listened, or downloaded or watched that you think the audience would benefit from?
Right. I'm right now reading a book written by Kevin Scott about reprogramming the American dream. And he was the chief technology officer at Microsoft. And he's basically developed an idea of addressing the needs of rural as well as metropolitan workforce. That includes artificial intelligence and augmented reality, but how do we control that? And as you mentioned earlier, telehealth is one component, but we have many areas of practice as well as technology that we could integrate into best practices.
Love that. And I do want to give a nod to Eric Robertson saying Walden also has a very nice motocross track, which is also known as the Playboy track. We do still have that. I have never ridden on it because my mom wouldn't let me. Yeah, she figured I would hurt myself. She's probably right.
Say hello to your mom because I think she did the right thing, as always mom should do. Because
mom's probably watching. Who knows? Final question on 3 question is a who question. Give a nod to someone. Who should the audience know more about?
Sure, I'm going to go 2 people, one in telehealth and one as an older mentor. I'm going to go with Christina Crawford at the VA in Arizona. She's a telehealth, telerehab practitioner lead there. And I've learned a lot from her past experiences in telehealth and telerehab. And she's actually done a podcast with APTA for Choose PT. And I know APTA has a new brand and a website. And I think you can still find her there in terms of her podcast. The second person, if you give me a minute to say thank you to, would be Dr. Bob Bartlett, who was the former chair at Duke University PT program. And when I was there with others, he really, really watched out for us as students, as well as graduates, as well as peers in physical therapy. So I want to say hello to Dr. Bartlett, and hopefully he's going well.
Love it. All right, final question for you is with the parting shot. Alan, what do you got for us in terms of the parting shot? Your last chance for a mic drop moment, the last thing to leave with the audience before we bring you out and bring in Chris Reed.
Sure. Hey, Jimmy, I really want to thank you for all of you've done over these past several months. I think what's really important for us to learn from this experience is that we are a profession of being together in a community. And telehealth is just one component of what we do very well, and we're going to do much better in the future. So watch out. Next 100 years, here we come.
Yeah, alluding to the centennial of the American Physical Therapy Association, which starts in January 2021. We are 100 years old as a profession. This is going to be fantastic. Thanks to the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy for bringing you the parting shot. Alan, we're gonna have you take that mule, sit right there. We're gonna bring in Chris Reed in just a couple seconds, but don't go anywhere. We're gonna bring you in for the wrap up. So thank you so much for talking. We appreciate. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Are you having a difficult time treating your patients with shoulder conditions? Are you looking to take your clinical skills to a new level? Or are you planning on taking the OCS? I'd like to tell you about the Shoulder Independent Study course by the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Written by some of our profession's leading shoulder experts, such as George Davies and Sue Falsone, it includes topics such as appropriate interventions following rotator cuff repairs and treatment of anterior shoulder instability. We hope you'll visit us at orthoptlearn.org, purchase this course, and take the next step in your professional development.
We're back on the show, bringing in our next guest, Chris Reed. Thank you so much, Chris Reed, for your time. I had to jump off camera for just a second because my brother's dog was barking so loud that it was actually ringing in my ears. So I want to welcome Jasper to the show. But Chris, welcome to the program, man. How you doing?
Great, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all that you've been doing to help promote the profession over the years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the fact that the California Physical Therapy Association is so forward thinking and saying, listen, we got to make sure we get this information right. It feels a little bit like the PACER program, which is put together by the APTA with a bunch of the different sections and components and academies. I don't want to be that guy, but like A-Team, right? Hannibal Smith, his whole line was, I love it when a plan comes together. And California was like, listen, telehealth, super important. let's get some people together who know what they're talking about in terms of telehealth and bring them together. So Chris, what's your story in terms of the audience? Let them know what you do and kind of where you came from.
Yeah, so I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for about 20 years. I was actually one of Dr. Alan Lee's students back in the day. So he got me involved into this crazy profession that we're all in. But now my day job is I'm the CFO for Agile Physical Therapy here in the Bay Area, California. And then I'm also the Government Affairs Committee Chair for the California Physical Therapy Association. So, I'm one of those crazies that likes to go up to the Capitol and talk politics.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that there are people like you, because we know now probably more than ever, we need to be talking about the things that are important to us. And I'm saying us as a profession. Otherwise, things don't get done. People won't pay attention unless we're talking about it in a great way with the people that will move and shake and get those things changed.
Yeah, no, it's super important for us to get our stories out there. One of my colleagues on the Government Affairs Committee, James Sims, he likes to say, if I was a legislator right now and there was a water issue down in the Central Valley, I know nothing about water.
Right.
And like land rights and all that. So I need people that it affects to come and talk to me and give me those stories. So that way I have a better understanding of it. Same thing with physical therapy. There are no physical therapists in the California legislature. There's no physical therapists or physical therapist assistants in the US legislature. Right. So it's really important that we go out and we tell those stories to the legislators, because if they don't know what it is that we do, why it's important, how it affects the patients, how it affects their constituents, then it's not important to them. But once they start to hear those stories, once they start to understand how it affects the public, then they really start to get it. And they really start to, promote what it is that we're trying to do.
Make sure we get in that ear. And that's why I'm glad for people like you who are advocating. I forgot to ask you the hardest question of all. This is the one that'll be the most difficult for you to answer on the show. What are we drinking tonight?
So I've got a citrus single hop IPA from Hermitage Brewery here in San Jose, California.
Yeah. I like that very much. I'm still nursing it's a little larger than normal beer, but I'm doing my Sloop Juice Bomb IPA. And I will say it is quite bomb in terms of an IPA.
Nice.
So webinar's coming up. You're part of it with Alan Lee. And first thing that we wanted to talk about with you in terms of advocating, making sure that people know about our story, we wanted to make sure we know what's written down. So first thing is know the laws of the land. Make sure you know the rules.
Yeah, it's really important that you understand what your state allows. I know that this podcast is going out beyond the borders of California, right? So if you're a therapist that's out there somewhere else in the US, make sure you know what your state board allows you to do. Make sure you know where your patient is also, because one of the things that we need to think about, right? When a patient walks into the four walls of our clinic, we don't have to think about where that patient is located, right? We know that they're within the state that we're licensed to treat in. But when somebody jumps onto a Zoom call or some other platform, and you don't necessarily know exactly where they're at, you need to make sure that that they're in the state, that they're in a state that you're licensed in.
Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you can do is if you go to the Federation of State Boards webpage, they actually have a nice list of what the laws are around the country in different states that will allow you to know what you need to do in order to be legal to practice in those states. So I highly recommend people go and check that out.
Chris, with someone as you start at the top of your conversation, who's kind of in the know in your state, when we start to inch towards interstate licensure compact, will there be a time when people are watching this interview 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now where they'll go, what do they mean they need to pay attention to their lakes? Will we ever get to the point where we don't need to worry about state borders, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think there's something to the state, the local government issue.
Right.
I do think there's a time where we're going to have the physical therapy compact in all 50 states.
Right.
And the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, right? And so it won't really matter where you're licensed. You'll still be able to practice in every other state because you'll be able to get that compact privilege pretty easily, and the barriers to licensure will go away. But I do think that you'll still have to worry about state licensure and still have to worry about letting the other states know that you're going to be practicing in those states.
And that just goes to what's on the bottom of the screen right now. Know the laws of the land. So no matter where we go, you're still going to need to pay attention to your State Practice Act, your scope of practice. And this is why probably it's never going to go away in terms of the things that you do, Chris, in terms of advocating and staying in touch with those people who are in the state capitals, making the rules, making the laws.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, we know that as of right now, physical therapists are allowed to treat Medicare patients via telehealth and get paid for it. But what some people may not realize is that's only a temporary order right now. And that once this COVID pandemic goes away, then the ability for physical therapists to treat Medicare patients through video format is going to go away also. So we need to continue to advocate for the federal government to pass the Connect bill, the Connect Act, so that way physical therapists will be an authorized provider of telehealth services ongoing. And we know that our Medicare beneficiaries are eating up telehealth, which is really surprising. The generation that has struggled to understand technology is really adopting to it, and they're the most vulnerable right now, right? Because COVID is disproportionately affecting those that are over 60 years old, and so to give them the opportunity to be able to have their essential physical therapy care delivered through a safe means over video is super important.
Yeah, telehealth, not just for COVID-19. And you're really, really hitting the nail on the head there, which is, well, first of all, it's kind of ageist to say anybody can't learn and adapt to new technology, right? I mean, my grandmother, Virginia, who in theory is probably watching right now because she's grandma. She watches everything that I do. Facebook page. She's active on social media. She knows how to drop emoji bombs. She sends me gifts. She's always giving me the wave emoji. A little bit ageist to say, listen, people over X years age don't know how to use technology and they're the most vulnerable and they could get the most benefit out of telehealth. So telehealth, though, not just for COVID-19, this again alludes back to the other thing that you do, Chris, which is advocating. We need to make sure this doesn't go away.
Exactly. No, I mean, at Agile Physical Therapy, prior to Medicare authorizing Medicare beneficiaries to receive visits by telehealth, we had Medicare beneficiaries paying out of pocket for the service because they wanted it so badly. And so the fact that now we're able to do it by under Medicare rules, we need to keep pushing it and make sure that our beneficiaries know that it's possible that it can go away and that they're advocating as well on our behalf and on their behalf, really.
Yeah. If you look at this from just a consumer and value perspective, if you said, I can deliver care that you need, information, insight, I can gather information using this camera thing right here, and it's easier for you, it's cost effective, you're not going to miss appointments because of wildfires or snow or COVID or pandemics, why wouldn't you want to make sure that avenue is available even past, hopefully, let's cross our fingers, when this pandemic ends? This is the thing that we like to say is we're so great at education. We love that we spend a lot of time with our patients. Let's make sure that does not go down after COVID-19. Let's use this as a springboard, and that only happens when we advocate.
Right. And one of the things that we're doing at Agile right now is we use photo for our outcomes measures.
Right. FOTO.
And we've actually created some different labels so that way we can identify which patients are being seen by primarily telehealth, which patients are being seen through a hybrid or like a roughly 50-50 model of telehealth and in-person, which patients are being seen in person. So that way we can track what our outcomes are to be able to show the effectiveness of telehealth. Once we get 2, 3, 4 quarters into this thing, and we really have some good solid data. So that way we can prove to the payers that, look, telehealth really is effective for taking care of patients. And we might also find out that there's certain patient populations that it's not effective on.
You're literally just like, I'm taking my money, I'm gonna put it where my mouth is. You're like, I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing is legitimate. Kind of alluding to what Alan said. We got Alan Lee on the show, 10 minutes ago, who taught you in PT school, right? Or was a mentor to you. Alan should be the guy saying telehealth is the way to go. There's no other way, but he's not. He's saying, let's measure this, and you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, and it's one of the things that physical therapists have done so well over the years is, not just rested on our laurels and figured, oh, well, we're able to do this thing, so we're just going to do it and be good at it. No, we actually wanted to prove that what we do works and continue to refine and iterate on the things that we're doing and make sure that those things that, are proven to be ineffective or less effective are used less.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. And I would love for someone who's watching or listening to this episode 3, 5, 7 years from now and going, well, thank you for doing that, because whatever data you tracked now in 2020, I'm actually basing my outcomes on that 5, 10, 15 years from now, and that patients are still getting access to care. So for us doing this now and not just saying, we're just going to take advantage of this COVID situation and we'll see how long this thing rides, we're saying, let's keep researching it. We think that what we're doing is fantastically valuable, and we're willing to test it and put our money where our mouth is, so that in the future, our patients still have access and we're able to provide that care via this intervention, this medium of telehealth. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's an exciting time that we're in, for sure. And, it's one of those times where, we're going to look back. Well, we won't look back because, the likelihood is at the 200-year celebration, we won't be here. But but you never know, right? Who knows what with advances in medicine, what might happen.
Right.
But at the second centennial, it's going to be one of those pivotal moments where, they look back and they see how the field of physical therapy and the field of medicine changed in 2020. And there was an inflection point of some kind.
Yeah.
How that inflection point is going to play out, we don't know at this point. But there's definitely an inflection point that's happening right now that's changing the practice of medicine and physical therapy. And it's fun to be on the frontier of it and to kind of help to shape it. But it's really all the people, the great people that we get to work with, both through the CPTA and through my day job, that really allows us to do the things that we do.
I love that. And I've said this before multiple times to friends, on camera and off. We're living through a social studies chapter right now, in terms of the world. We've got civil issues, we've got science issues, and paying attention to where you are, which side of the chapter you're going to be on in terms of embracing the evidence. That's very important. I think people should be asking themselves that question. Which side of the social studies chapter are you going to be on? Are you comfortable with that? And I love the fact that, physical therapy is saying, we're going to make sure we can adapt and adopt this technology and pushing it forward. Now, you're saying that this time in history is very, very exciting in terms of telehealth. But is this the most exciting time right now on this show interviewing, or did you use telehealth in some way recently to maybe having a more exciting time in your personal life? Maybe there's something else that's more exciting than this.
Well, I did recently get married on Zoom.
You got married on Zoom. I want to make sure people are hearing Chris. Let's turn the volume up a little bit louder. Chris got married on Zoom. That's how much you are willing to love and adopt telehealth. You got married on Zoom. Tell me about this.
So my wife and I, we were scheduled to get married on May 9th,
right?
Which, as you all know, was right in the middle of the shelter in place that we're all living through these days. And so the state of California authorized virtual weddings the week before. And so we set my laptop up in the backyard, and our officiant was in St. Louis, Missouri. And our parents were, at their homes. Our siblings were at their homes, and we just logged into a Zoom meeting and had a wedding.
Wow. I've seen a couple of those. I've never actually talked to anybody who did that. But how did it go?
It went super smooth. Yeah, it was. We had a very short ceremony planned, and so the ceremony was pretty short. And then it was a little bit surreal because once we got off the Zoom meeting, we were like, okay, now what? Where's the party?
Right, it's dead silent, but I'm here by myself.
Yeah, so we popped some champagne and enjoyed some bubbly and took some pictures, and then wasted the rest of the afternoon on the couch watching Netflix.
That's fantastic. I love bringing in stories like that. So Chris Reed is so heavily invested, integrated into telehealth. he's willing to get married on the platform. So I love that. I wanted to bring in a quick patient story. You've actually not evidence-based, but you've been able to actually use increased hydration to reduce back pain. So talk to me a little bit about how you have a patient increase water intake, which will reduce back pain. I would love to hear this.
So I had a patient, this was probably about 15, 20 years ago. I had a patient, she was in her 70s. She was a clothing designer, a little Japanese woman. Was a clothing designer. She came in with lower back pain. So I saw her for a couple of sessions and her back was feeling pretty good. She comes in for her third or fourth session and she says to me, man, my back was really feeling good. And then yesterday I had to work all day and my back started to kill me. And so I was like, okay, well, let's talk about what you were doing, using that functional information that we all are so good at getting. And so she said, well, yeah, she's like, so I've got some fabric that's laid out and I'm like leaning over the fabric and doing some design work. And so I said, okay, well, it's like you're bent over the table a little bit and then you stand back up and you do some other things. She's like, no, I'm literally bent over at 90 degrees for 8-10 hours a day. Yeah, exactly. Horizontal. And I'm like, all right, well, can we raise the table up so that way you don't have to bend over so much? She's like, no, I need to be over to the top of it so I can see what I'm doing. I'm like, all right, lay down the table. Let me think about this. All right, so I'm working on her back. I'm like, hey, how am I going to get her to stand up throughout the day? All right, and so she stands up afterwards and she's feeling better. We do some exercises and I said, okay, next time you got to work, I want you to take, those little half-liter balls of water? I want you to drink about 8 of them in an 8-hour day. And she's like, ew. I'm like, yeah, I know. It sounds like a lot. She's like, okay. So she goes off on her way and she comes back next time. She's like, man, I worked 3 out of the last 5 days. My back's been feeling great. I was like, oh, did you drink that water? She goes, yeah. The only problem is it made me go pee all the time.
Ugh.
And I said, perfect. And she looks at me. I said, well, if you had to go to the bathroom, then you had to stand up and you had to walk a little bit. So, we got you moving, lubricating those joints in your lower back. And then you got to go back and bend over the table and you were good. She wasn't very happy with me, but it's a story that I tell all my patients now. And, it gets them to drink a lot more water.
Yeah. I heard that story and I wanted to make sure that the audience got that, which is you could have given her really in-depth information and education about facet joints and lubrication and moving, but you saw what she saw in terms of I need to be engulfed in this every minute of an 8 or 10 or 12-hour day. And you said, how can I get her to not think about that and think about this thing? By the way, also like water. I mean, it's never a bad thing. Have a couple bottles of water. Yeah. And that made her move, but good on you. And I love that little trick. And I will be definitely stuffing that into my pocket and saying, you know what? That's one that I'm going to be using. So kudos to you for the water trick. Drinking water reduces back pain.
Who knew?
Who knew? Chris Reed coming up in the telehealth webinar from the State of California Physical Therapy Association. Are you ready for 3 questions?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
3 questions right now. Brought to you by our friends from RES Medical Staffing. Travel physical therapy leaders. Positions in all 50 states, all settings, and Washington, D.C. First question's a where question. Chris, you're in California, but if you had 3 months to go anywhere in the 50 United States, where would you want to go and be a PT?
Well, I would actually, I'm not sure if you've ever heard this one, but okay. I would love to go to Nebraska.
No, not usually. Usually Nebraskans want to get the heck out.
Right. But see, I'm a huge baseball fan.
Oh,
and one of the things I've always wanted to do is go to the College World Series. So what better way to go to Omaha than to go and work as a PT for 3 months?
I will tell you, and our friends at RES Medical Staffing are from Omaha. They're based there. And I went to the National Student Conclave while I was still a student in PT school. And I had this, I'm from New York, I had this preconceived notion of Omaha in my mind because I was like, Nebraska, how much fun could it be? It is a really, really nice town. I have zero bad things to say about Omaha. They had great bars, great restaurants, and everybody there was terribly nice. And you got Rosenblatt, you got the College World Series, the stadium right there in town. Omaha should be on your list of places to go. So everybody from Nebraska is probably just giving us a comment right now. Second question on 3 questions is a what question? Book, Netflix episode, podcast. Give me a what, something that you think the audience would have value in.
Yeah, so I actually read, this was probably about 2.5 months ago. It's called The World Remade by COVID-19.
Oh.
And it's a series of scenarios for resilient leaders. It was put together by Deloitte and Salesforce. And basically they scenario thinkers, and they thought through 4 different large scenarios of what the world was going to look like post-COVID. So it's a really good exercise to take yourself through, take your company through, to kind of think through what's my world going to look like, post-COVID. And they specifically say in there, like, none of these 4 are going to be right, but it's going to be some mixture of this stuff. So, but it gives you a way of starting to think about what the world might look like and how you might need to adapt going forward.
Yeah, if I had said, Chris, listen, I know it's February in 2020, but I'm gonna need you to go ahead and buy 200 rolls of toilet paper. You'd be like, Jimmy, I don't understand why I need to do that, but I was like, listen, just do that.
I'd want to know what mansion we're going to toilet paper.
It's a thought process exercise in terms of why are these people who think professionally for a living, obviously, how are they thinking? And nothing that they say is going to be true, but you watch their thought process and, hey, I'm understanding what so that's cool. I like that. Third question on 3 questions for you is a who question. Who should the audience know more about?
So I put a lot of thought into this one, and Mike Eisenhart is a physical therapist in New Jersey, and he does a lot with public health and prevention. And so I think that's really a direction that the field needs to be going in. And he's somebody that I think everybody needs to go out and look up and start to learn more about what he's doing and what the American Preventive Health, or the Academy of Prevention and Health Promotion Therapies is doing. Because I really think that that's an up and coming venue for physical therapists, and something that the public really needs.
Yeah, Mike's been talking about this for years, and I lucked out having him on the show while I was still a PT student, and all of it kind of made complete sense to me, and I was almost quizzical as to why what Mike was talking about wasn't, proliferated throughout the profession. And now Mike is literally sitting back going, I told you guys you should be paying attention to this. So Mike Eisenhart probably, and I'll have one of our producers check into this, he's probably the guy, I would bet, as the guy who's most mentioned in who you should know, just based on the work that he's been doing. So thank you to Aureus Medical Staffing, aureusmedical.com, for bringing you 3 questions with Chris Reed. Last thing that we do before we bring back Annie, before we bring back Alan, is your parting shot. So your parting shot, last chance for a mic drop moment. What would you want to leave people with? Your parting shot from the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Find them at orthopt.org. What do you want to leave the audience with, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to echo a couple of things that Annie and Alan both mentioned. Telehealth isn't something to be afraid of. It's just a tool that we can use to do the things that we do every day. But just like something like knowing how to gate train somebody or knowing how to do a manipulation really well, right? It's something that takes practice and something that you need to work on, right? And so it's a skill in our toolbox that takes practice, that you need to work at, that the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the less robotic you get with it, the less you're thinking about what am I doing with the screen and what am I doing with the setup, the more you're actually thinking about the delivery of the care, right? And so I encourage everybody to get a mentor, get a colleague, somebody that you can work with on your skill of delivering telehealth physical therapy.
Anything else, any other intervention requires practice, and make sure you know how to deliver that. I promised I'd let you go before we bring back Alan and Annie, but I wanted to make sure we get to a question here. Melissa's asking live, best ways to communicate to your patients that you offer telehealth sessions. I'm sure with Agile, you mentioned you were doing this before COVID. Let's talk about that. Best ways to communicate to your patients that you offer telehealth sessions. What are you seeing there, Chris?
Yeah, so we've done it through multiple different things. pre-COVID, we just had a little pop-up on our website that said we're doing telehealth, right? And we were dabbling in it at that point in time.
Right.
But since COVID, we've sent several emails directly to our patients, as well as to the physicians that we serve, letting them know that telehealth services are available through Agile. We also have put lots of information out on social media through either our Facebook page or Instagram pages about telehealth and the services that they can provide. And then other ways is just doing various different podcasts and stuff. You never know who's going to be listening and who might hear, and be able to send their grandma, send their mother, send their aunt, their uncle, their son or daughter to you. So just doing anything you can to get the message out there that telehealth is an effective method, and that it's available at the clinic that you're at.
Yeah, I love this, and I love the fact that Melissa's asking this question, how granular and small this question is, but it's so important, because how do you do that? And this is where I love it, is because this is the intersection of my life, right? My first career was in radio broadcasting and communications, and now physical therapy. How do you communicate that physical therapy with the things that you can provide for the patient, for the caregiver? So the fact that Melissa's asking this question, I'm digging it. Her second half of the question: platforms that have been successful, user-friendly. Annie mentioned Zoom. What are you seeing?
So full disclosure, I am an advisor for Blue Jay Telehealth. So that's one out there that I do recommend. Zoom is a great platform to use. I've seen Doxy.me be real successful for clinics. Those are the three that just pop into my head off the top of the cuff there. So
I would say, Melissa, test those out that Chris mentioned, and also Annie had recommended Zoom. Test those out. Take them for a test drive. You wouldn't buy a brand new car without taking it for a test drive and seeing what you like and what you don't like. I don't like the windows. I don't like the fact there's no sunroof. Make sure you know what you're getting into. So Chris, appreciate that. Can we, Bridget, can we bring back in Annie, and can we bring back in Alan? Those guys have been hanging out. You're still hanging out in the backyard. Alan's still hanging out there with the telescope and the weight in the background. Upcoming webinar from the State of California Physical Therapy Association with these three right now. You've heard them talk about telehealth, some of the things that we could answer. Thank you guys for, number one, doing this show. We always appreciate when there's people who are smart, who know things, who are willing to come on here and have a drink and share some knowledge. Thanks for doing this in-depth webinar. We'll let people know the webinar, which we'll share in the comments below, the link that they can get there. They're going to get even more in-depth. So thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate that when colleagues are willing to put their time and their effort together to share information. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful.
There's some comments in the chat box that we share. There's some marketing strategies and solutions for Melissa that I'm sure you guys will share with them as well, from APTA, as well as the private practice section. So there's a lot of information out there, including the HPA telehealth matrix for the portal.
Yeah.
So again,
I love the fact that you guys are doing this. And this is, and I mentioned this earlier, it's similar to the PACER project. And if you haven't heard about the PACER project, in terms of access to information from the experts in all the different sections and academies across the APTA, specifically for COVID-19, I feel like telehealth acting and reacting to the situation that we're in, but you guys have been doing this for years. So thank you for that, in terms of, giving away good information and access, because ultimately, yes, the patient, the providers, the physical therapists, the physical therapist assistants are going to benefit, but in the end, it's all about the patient.
Agreed.
So Lou, Annie, anything you want to show us in terms of a background there that we might have been missing? Yeah. So the whole time Annie was on there, she was literally covering a toilet bowl filled with flowers. I don't even know how to love that more, and I will do that. Any questions you might have, guys, drop them in the comments below. Even if you're not watching this live, we'll make sure that we make sure we get someone gets there. Kristen is saying very, very informative. Thank you, guys. Can't wait for the webinar from the State of California Physical Therapy Association. We have that link right there if you're looking in the comments. Listen, show's over. Thank you, guys, for doing
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Now we can just